Hi friends, it's Peggy Noe from PrettyPaperCards.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I'm here today to show you how to make a fun Christmas card using the Stampin' Up! Perfectly Plaid stamp set. This is a set that I've loved for quite a while. It has what I love about it is the Christmas trees, and the trees have a coordinating punch called the Pine Tree Punch, and it punches out these little trees or plain cardstock, and it's just so much fun. So let me show you how to make this card. We're going to start out, we're using a kind of a different color palette today. We're going to use terracotta tile for our card base, and I have the card base, which is 8.5 by 5.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4, and I'm going to burnish the center fold there. And now we're going to, this is going to be our color palette. It's the terracotta tile, the Night of Navy, and Granny Apple Green. Isn't that a pretty color palette? I wasn't sure about it at first, but once I started using it, I have been loving it, and I've actually been making a lot of cards using this color palette. So we're going to have some layers that are kind of like frames for this card. So the first layer is going to be the Night of Navy, and it is going to be 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. We're going to adhere it with multi-purpose glue because we want to make sure we can get the edges just right, in that it's supposed to be kind of a frame, a layered frame. So let's put it down there and see if we can line it up. And it's easy with the glue because you can move it a little bit. So there's our pretty Night of Navy layer. Now we're going to add a layer of Granny Apple Green. And this one is another 1/4 inch in on all sides. So it's 5 inches tall by 3 3/4 inches wide. And doesn't that look pretty, that framing there? And when you have the measurements right and you use the multi-purpose glue to make sure that you can get it as straight as possible. I mean, none of us are perfect, right? But this is, I think this really is a nice look. Now we're going to put on a Whisper White layer. I'm going to do some stamping before I put it down, but I want to tell you that it is sized a little differently. It is not a 1/4 inch in on all sides, it's an 1/8 inch. And that's because we just want to have the smallest bit of the Granny Apple Green showing here. So what I would do is, what I did is I took the 3 3/4 by 5 and just moved in on my paper trimmer an 1/8 inch, and that's how I got this piece. Now, when I first started this card, it needed just a little bit of fun. And I like little dots. I don't know about you, but I like to have some little dots. And you could actually splatter. A splatter can be a little messy, and so I decided to use a little tiny dot stamp from the Gorgeous Posies stamp set. It's right here, these little dots. When I find dots that I like, I know where they are. And I really liked the dots here. So I'm going to stamp in Night of Navy using this little dot stamp, and then I'm going to stamp off and just stamp a couple times arbitrarily there on our piece of Whisper White. And it's just going to give a little bit more fun, a little better look to the background, I think. Just enough. So there are little dots. Now we can make our Christmas trees and use our fun tree stamps. Now, if you'll remember, this stamp set has actually 4 different trees that you could choose from. And it's called Perfectly Plaid, so there is a plaid tree. This is a very realistic looking tree. This is, maybe you would put ornaments down the center. I'm going to go for this one today. So I have my stamp ready to go, and I'm going to stamp on Granny Apple Green paper in Granny Apple Green ink. And I think for our purposes, I mean, the trees are green, and so I thought we would do this today. Now, because I already know that the punch works this way, you can see I've punched before. I've used this piece before, and because I know the way the punch goes, I know that I need to stamp my trees with the base of the tree down along this edge. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's ink up my tree in the Granny Apple Green ink, and I have a Stampin' Pierce mat underneath because this is a photopolymer stamp set, and that means it needs some extra padding to get a really good impression. You know, with your red rubber stamps, you have, there's a little padding built in, but you get a much better impression. You can stamp on a magazine too, that would work. And I'm going to stamp 3 trees, just like that. And now we'll punch them out with the pine tree punch. Punches are so handy. I mean, don't we all just love punches? And this punch, this set, it's not a bundle. It was a year or so ago when it first came out. It's not a bundle price now, but you get both the items individually. But it is a fabulous set for tags, holiday tags, for treats. You could put one of these cute little trees on a treat, you know, the top of a little treat bag or something. Both the punch and the stamp set are super usable, and I've used them a lot. Okay, let's make sure I get this on right. There we go. There are 3 trees. Now we're going to cut our sentiment. And if you remember, our sentiment was stamped on our terracotta tile cardstock. And so I have a scrap here for us. And the sentiment I'm using this time is the Merry Christmas sentiment from the stamp set. I've used it not even with the other parts of the stamp set, with the other stamps. It is such a beautiful sentiment. As far as the font and the way it's laid out, it's really, really pretty. And this Night of Navy looks gorgeous on this orange, this terracotta tile. So I'm just going to stamp it right there. Look at that. You know, some stamps just stamp really well. Isn't that pretty? Okay, now we're going to cut this out with a die. I love the Stitch So Sweetly dies, and I'll show them to you. I use them all the time. This is what they look like. And I'm going to use one of these stitched rectangles. They're both stitched and have a scallop on them. I'm going to bring up my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and we'll run that through. Now I'm also using the metallic, magnetic plate today. This is the magnetic plate, and it's fairly new, and the neat thing about it is it's magnetized throughout, so you can put your item anywhere and it will sit down, you know, it'll lay down really nicely. It doesn't have magnets in little places around like our former magnetized plate did. This is a full magnet, and you just use it in place of a cutting plate. So we'll just put this over and run that through. And it makes such a nice little frame for the sentiment. Isn't that just nice? Okay, let me put this off to the side. And now we'll get out our card and we'll finish it up. So here is our Whisper White piece that we stamped. Let's get that glued down. Checking to make sure I have all my trees. Instead of all my ducks in a row, I have all my trees in a row. Okay, so let's glue down our Whisper White piece here. And remember, this one is just a tiny bit inside the Granny Apple Green piece. I think that looks so pretty. What do you think about this color palette? Leave me a note, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. I was surprised I liked it so much. I really was. Okay, so now I'm just going to line these items up before I adhere them because I want to make sure I have enough room for the trees and the sentiment. So I want to get the trees, you know, even, and then I think I'll put this one on top. So let's see, I think that's about right for the sentiment. I'm going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals to adhere it, and you really only need two, one on each end. These hold really securely. And this just raises this piece up to get a little interest there. So we'll just put it up kind of like that. Is it straight? Maybe that might be just a hair bit crooked. Let me pull it up. Oops. Okay. So that left our sticky dimensionals down there, but you can just redo it. Sometimes I might put a new dimensional in there, but I think these are sticky enough. Yeah, it's holding on just well. See why I like the multi-purpose glue? I change my mind. I don't get things perfect the first time. Okay, so here are our little trees, and I am going to use the glue for these because we're going to use a Stampin' Dimensional for the center tree. We don't need too much glue, and we just put that down right at kind of toward the base. Here's our other one, just a tiny bit of the glue. And I want to try to get this about the same distance from the edge there. That looks good. And now we'll lift this one up on dimensionals, this particular tree, have it lift up a little bit. And for this tree, I'm going to use two dimensionals like I did before, and hopefully I won't have to pick it up. Hopefully I'll like the place that I put it. I think that's good. There's our card. Now we're going to add some bling. I always like to add a little bling. If you're mailing, if you were to make a whole bunch of these for mailing for your Christmas cards, I might not add the bling. And I'll tell you why. It's because sometimes the rhinestones might poke out of the envelope. Some people put another piece of cardstock over the front of their card when they're inserting it in the envelope, so that doesn't happen. But it's also okay to leave the rhinestones off for just for the card if you're going to mail a whole bunch of them. And I'm just going to put on the 3 little rhinestones like that. Now, we can't forget about the inside of our card. And particularly with a dark card base, you want to be sure to have something light. I mean, you could write on this, but I don't think it looks as pretty. I think it's, I guess, not as professional looking. I like to have a pretty piece of Whisper white paper and a little reminder of the theme of the card, which is the Christmas trees. So I'm going to stamp the tree right down here. There we go. And that looks pretty cute. And now we'll glue that onto the inside of our card. And then we can't forget about the envelope. I have an envelope that I did in advance with the little green tree. And especially for Christmas time, I think a tree on the outside of your envelope is, I mean, that's going to make somebody definitely open that card, don't you think? I mean, I think they would anyway. And you know, I've been thinking a lot this Christmas with the COVID situation. I think we need to send cards more than ever before. I really do. So there's your pretty Christmas tree with the interesting color palette. The terracotta tile Night of Navy and Granny Apple Green. And it's made using the Perfectly Plaid stamp set.